Welcome to Work from the Inside Out, a podcast that highlights real-life stories, practical strategies, and best practices for transitioning your career from unhappiness and dissatisfaction to fulfillment, meaning, and joy. Now here is your host, career and executive coach, Tammy Guler-Loeb.
Hey, everybody. I am delighted to introduce my guest today, Etta Jacobs. Etta is an executive coach who specializes in career transitions and leadership development. Etta is somebody who I met recently, and the moment we met, it was like we knew each other for a long time. There was some connection or something that just clicked, including the fact that she and my brother lived on the same floor of the same dormitory their freshman year of college, but I won't tell you what year that was. The thing that I think is remarkable about Etta and the way she handles transitions is different from what I usually preach, actually, to people when I say, transitions don't happen overnight. But Etta kind of breaks the mold in that way, because when Etta has made transitions, sometimes she has made them very quickly. I don't want to say overnight, but her way of making transitions comes genuinely from the inside out. And so when her intuition or her instincts speak to her, she listens and acts on it fairly quickly and trusts that. She has such a fine connection to her intuition. I've never, ever met anyone like this before. So please join me in welcoming Etta Jacobs. Welcome, Etta.
Thank you, Tammy. Oh my God. Good thing people can't see me blushing. Thank you very much. Very kind.
The way that you've landed where you are and also the way that we've connected. It's just been so extraordinary and special. And so, but let's go back to the earlier years. As you know, on Work from the Inside Out, we like to begin with the earlier years and talk about, what may or may not have been formative in terms of where you are now.
I know often you talk to people about their childhood, and I don't want to spend a lot of time there, but I realized how my parents raised us had a huge impact on my philosophy of living. And when I was a kid, we lived in Manhattan. My mom was an anesthesiologist and my dad was a newspaper editor. And in their mid-40s, they just packed up my sister and me and they moved to upstate New York. So here I was living in the middle of Manhattan. And next thing you know, ninth grade, I'm out in the woods in a tiny little upstate New York school where there were 73 kids in my class, and my parents created new lives. People always said, "Oh, you must miss Manhattan." I go, "Nope, never think about it." I don't even know how soon after we moved, we went back to New York. I have no idea. It's like the minute I landed, I was in my new home.
That's unusual. Now, you said that was high school. So
that was high school. That's what I'm saying. So ever since I can remember, you just pick me up and I will plant roots somewhere new. Went to high school and then college, and then went back to Manhattan to start a career as a graphic designer. I lived there for many years, had a good career until it wasn't. And because each of these changes, again, happened organically. I didn't plan any of this. And so when I had lived in Manhattan for many years, and then out of the blue, a headhunter called me one day and said, "Do you want to go on a job interview?" And I said yes, because I was just absolutely miserable in my job. So I just would have been happy just to take almost anything.
Oh, wow.
And so I went on the interview and it looked promising, except the job was in Boston. And I had never thought about Boston, just because I was a New Yorker and that was fine. But I was so unhappy and I knew I needed a change. I thought, I'll just go in the interview, what can be lost? As I left the interview, On the train ride back to New York, on the Amtrak back to New York, I thought, I have the job. If I don't get this job, I don't know what I'm going to do. This was what I had to do. And it literally fell in my lap. And so I got the job. And from the day the headhunter called to the day I was living in Boston was like 6 weeks. The point was, so here, this was not a dream of mine to live in Boston. It was just this crazy thing. A headhunter called. 6 weeks later, I'm living in Boston. And I remember driving home, and I just had this kinesthetic full body experience, looking up at the trees, driving down my little street. And I thought, wow, I found my way home. Tear up just thinking about it. I remember in that moment feeling that I was more at home here in Boston than I had ever felt in New York.
Isn't that interesting?
But the reason I tell the story is wherever I am is home.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And the transition happens immediately.
It's very interesting, the two transitions that you're noting too, because they're major life transitions, right?
Right.
And then this move from New York to Boston, you know, even though you were unhappy at work, it sounds like, tell me if I'm wrong about this, that even though you were finding yourself miserable, it wasn't until somebody else kind of made the suggestion that you might want to make some kind of a change that you made a change, or were you already looking at other things or looking to make a move, or what was your thinking at the time in terms of your own career and where you wanted to go at that point?
So that's a great question. And now I have enough perspective to see it's my pattern. So I will answer this and then also show how it happened again.
Sure.
And so I noticed patterns, and that's one of the gifts I give to my clients is to help them see the patterns.
Sure.
So I was a graphic designer. I was an illustration major in college, and I wanted to illustrate children's books. And then I realized being an extrovert, being home alone, drawing all day was not a good fit. So very quickly realized that wasn't going to happen. So to make a living, I became a graphic designer, and that was a good fit because I was in an office and I was working with people, and it combined all parts of my brain. It was both super creative. I was in the publishing industry, so I was became an art director. So I was using my creative muscles, but I was also leading teams and being responsible for huge budgets. So it was really brilliant work. But like a lot of people, I was working too hard. I was single, so I didn't have like kids to come home to or anyone else. So, and I realized for a couple of years, I had outgrown the job, that there was nothing more for me to learn. I had been there 12 years, so I learned a lot. I had many different roles. I'm very grateful for everything I learned. And I was so stressed out, I couldn't even imagine what else could happen. So I didn't have the bandwidth. So that's what it was. So it's not like, woe is me. It's just, I need to get through the day. I'm so stressed. I had been in this job for 12 years and living in New York. A lot of my friends were in the publishing industry, writers, artists. And one of my best friends worked at the Oprah Winfrey magazine. She was an editor. And as one of my best friends, she knew how miserable I was. So April of 2001, she said, Etta, the magazine is sponsoring what she called a career spa day. Do you want to go? And that's the other thing I've noticed. I always say yes. Anytime anyone asks me to do anything, the answer is yes. I don't ask for details. I don't second guess. It's just yes. And I thought, what could possibly be wrong with doing this? So I went. It was a one-day workshop led by this remarkable woman, Rana Lichtenberg, who I'm still in touch with her. It was one-day workshop, and there were 12 women in the group, and it was all about imagining the next stage of your career, whatever that is. And it's a series of 9 questions. So we start the workshop. She gives us like 20 minutes quiet time, and we imagine our ideal day at work. And then we spent the rest of the workshop imagining what steps we could take to make it happen in 18 months. And this ideal day that I had imagined was out in the woods, on a porch, writing and drawing. And in my head, when I imagined this ideal day, it was going to happen in 10 years. So Rana kept saying, well, you have to, we're going to spend the day brainstorming ways you can make this happen in 18 months. And I kept arguing with her. I said, no. This dream is my dream for 10 years. And I kept arguing. She finally said, Etta, you really need to just be quiet. And, we're New Yorkers, so it was pretty direct. Etta, basically, shut your mouth, do the work. All right, all right. So I finally stopped fighting and did whatever the exercise was. And so that was April 2001. And a month later is when I got the call from the headhunter.
Uh-huh.
And then 6 weeks later, I was living in Boston, and every single thing that I had imagined, here come the tears, every single thing I had imagined on that piece of paper came true 4 months later, where I had a porch because I was dreaming for a porch. So I made sure I was renting at the time. I had this half a two family in a small town outside of Boston, right near Cambridge. I had a back porch. I started my morning every morning with coffee out on the porch. The other part of my dream was that I was very creative, and my job in New York was more administrative. Right. I was a design director. It was processes and team building, which is great.
Yeah.
But I wasn't creative anymore. Right. Whereas the new job in Boston, or actually Cambridge, I was creative director for a small design studio or a publishing house. And it was so creative. I was building a team from scratch. It was everything I had imagined that I wanted on my ideal day had come true. So the answer is this is the magic that I now can help my clients with, that you just figure out. And the reason this activity is so magnificent, and actually I can probably send you the questions and you can post them.
Oh, that is very generous
of you. Them. Well, I will thank Rana for this because she said I could use it with clients. So here we go.
That's great.
And I will add her name.
Sure, there. Absolutely. Yeah.
And it's partly manifesting, and I don't know that we want to get too much into that, but I think it's really more about getting clarity about what's important to you.
Yeah.
And I think people are too much in their heads. Yeah. And they're trying to imagine, I know they'll say, I know I'm miserable, but I don't know what to do. And so these questions, and part of the coaching process is to help them. What's important to you? So for example, for some people, freedom is having their own business. For other people, that would be so terrifying and threatening, they couldn't even think straight. For other people, having a staff job where insurance is taken care of, you get paid vacation, for them, that's freedom and comfort.
That's right.
And that's something that Rana taught us in the workshop, which I actually knew intuitively. But it's something I'm sure for you help your clients when they're trying to figure out what they want to do. Here's the difference. In a million years, in that day in April 2001, if someone said, oh, by the way, come August, you're going to be living in Boston, you're just going to pick up your whole life, and I think you're crazy. But more than that is every single thing on my list came true, but in a form that was different than I had imagined.
Now that's interesting.
Right. Thank you. That was the point I wanted to make. That's the point. People are too tied to being literal about what it is. And the part of the coaching process that I learned just intuitively is you go for the essence quality of what's important to you. When I think back to the transition I talked about when I left New York, I learned so much from that job. Some of my best friends I made in that job. And about 2 years before I left, I knew I had outgrown it, that there was nothing more for me to learn. And that's one thing. I get very antsy if I'm not learning anything.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that actually, and you're probably wondering how I became a coach. So I just realized it's the echo of that happened again. And again, I noticed, so I moved to Boston, and it was weird one month before September 11th. So that was very intense. So that kind of shifted what it was like having been in New York, and then a month later, September 11th.
Yeah, that's right. So 2001, right. August 2001, you moved 1 month.
Right. And what's incredible is the view outside my window in New York had a straight view of the World Trade Center. So all my colleagues saw everything happen.
Wow.
So anyway, it's very interesting how our lives happen. So
it's definitely very interesting how your life happens.
Anyway, so I'm in Boston, and so I had this dream job at a small studio. And again, some of my best friends in Boston came from that studio. But like a lot of businesses, speaking of September 11th, it really took a hit. Even though, just because if you remember in 2001, the whole country was just in a state of shock. Anyway, so one of the casualties of September 11th was this wonderful company that I worked for. And they tried to make it go. And a year and a half after I got there, it folded. It just, sadly, it could never recover after the hit of September 11th. So luckily, and again, it's all about connections. As the design director, I was the face of the projects to our clients. So anytime we were presenting, book designs to any of our big clients, I was the one doing the presentation. And so one of our clients was Prentice Hall, and then it eventually became Pearson.
Mm-hmm.
And so the team there knew me. They knew that the studio where I was working had folded. So 2 days after everyone was laid off, I got a call from Prentice Hall saying, "Hey, do you want a job?"
Huh.
Yes. So trust me, I am beyond lucky and forever grateful. I ended up being there again 12 years. That seems to be the length that I stay at these places. But what's interesting, at about the same period so what is that, 10 years? I remember waking up one morning going, "Oh, I recognize this feeling. I know exactly what this means. It means I'm done. There's no more for me to learn. We need to start cooking up some new ideas." And so at this point, I knew I was unhappy. And again, it's really more about I had outgrown the job. I didn't want to work my way up the corporate ladder because I loved having my hands in the design. So I recognized I'm miserable. But again, just like back when I was in New York, I didn't know what I wanted to do. I was like playing with things and, just trying.
I have a question for you.
Sure.
Because, again, you talk about patterns, right?
Yes.
And there are patterns that are external, right? And then there are your own internal patterns. So I'm looking at your internal pattern here and I'm thinking, so once again, you had outgrown the job and you were unhappy. And, oftentimes when I hear people talk about being unhappy, they're usually unhappy about something that's external to them, like, the leadership is, not well aligned with their values, or there's other politics going on in the organization, right. Or they've gotten a new boss and it's not a good match, or there are cutbacks and all of a sudden they're doing the job of 2 or 3 people, so there's things external to them out of their immediate control, let's say, that happen, and they're just finding themselves really not enjoying having to deal with the dynamic external to them. Your description is more of an internal, I've outgrown the job. I'm unhappy because I'm not seeing a path that I would choose to take. I could choose certain pathways, but I'm not seeing one that I really want. And I'm wondering if there were other things, either in the previous role in Manhattan or in this one where there were other things at play external to you that were sort of part of that more typical picture that creates or contributes to somebody's unhappiness at work?
Yes, definitely. Part of the problem was partly market conditions changed. So the old model for publishing is you sell books. And who are our customers? School districts. So school districts have X amount of money to buy textbooks. Well, guess what? Now that we had to create digital products and books, you had two separate teams. So to create the same book, you had twice as many people. You also had to create double the product because you had the print product and you had the digital product. But guess what? The school district didn't want to pay double.
Right.
They still had their budget. So to make a long story short, the business model had shifted. So money got very tight, and a lot of the love and care that my fellow designers and editors, and many of the editors have been school teachers. So these are people who were dedicating their whole life to helping children and teachers. And because of the market forces, we didn't have enough time to do the level of work that we wanted to. So when I had that internal sense that there was no more for me to learn, that I was done, and I was getting antsy to leave. Again, talk about girlfriends. So a random weekend, a good friend of my husband and mine, Susan, she said, "Hey, Etta, do you want to go away on a weekend?" What do I say? Yes.
Yes.
I didn't even ask. I said, "Whatever it is, yes, I'll go." And she invited me and a good friend of hers named Tracy. So 3 women in the car. I had never met Tracy. And so the first question I said to Tracy is, what do you do? She says, "Oh, I'm an executive coach." I said, "Oh, what's that?" Because I had never had a coach. I mean, aside from Rana, but we didn't call her a coach. And I said, "What's an executive coach do, huh?" So she started telling me. And by the time we got to where we were going, I knew that's what I wanted to do. And I said to her, "Where did you get your training?" She told me. I didn't even research it. I just applied, got into the program, and it was a 9-month program. And I was still in my day job.
Yeah.
And my plan was to do, I'm sure you have your clients do this, like, don't just start a business from scratch. It's always good to, test it out. So that was my plan.
Yeah.
To keep my day job and build a coaching practice.
Exactly.
And then I realized, it might be better if I got myself laid off, because then I would get severance. And I did nothing to undermine anything. I still did a good job. And I wasn't even that conscious. The difference is, had I wanted to stay and I intuited that I could be pegged as someone to be let go, I would have been networking my brains out, talking to HR. I know I can see what's happening. Who should I talk to? Or I would have gone on interviews, etc. I did none of that. So I sort of passively let it happen. And so after I went through the coaching program, I realized I needed more. So I went back to get my master's in organizational psychology. And I was even talking to HR, could this big company pay for some of my master's? I didn't tell them about the coaching, but I said, I'm going back to school. And so we were in conversations. And about 3 weeks before I started the master's, I got laid off. So I am forever grateful for that company, for all that I learned, and for the people I met.
So, it's interesting, this is one of those transitions which you kind of set the intention around. It took a little longer, though, it sounds like, than maybe some of the other transitions you made, because this one, it sounds like, was a little bit more of a vision over time.
It was a sense that I needed to change. It was like I was sitting with it for 2 or 3 years. Definitely.
Yeah.
But again, just the way my brain works is I just have to sit with it for a while. And then after I sit with it, then when it shows up, then I know that's it. And so that's the same thing that happened back in New York. Right. I knew I was unhappy. I didn't know what I wanted. I did the exercise in that workshop. And so when the interview came, I realized that's it.
Yeah. There's no
So
hemming and hawing at that point. Yeah.
So I had been doing this internal work, sort of consciously, some not, so that again, when I was away on the girls' weekend and Tracy said executive coach, I knew that was it.
Yeah. 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 And so you had this kind of, let's say, cushion between going back to school and then starting your coaching practice. And have you been completely self-employed since that time?
Yes.
Well, how about that? Congratulations. So tell us about how that has evolved since you finished your master's and went on from there.
So the first thing I would say to anyone who wants to start, whether it's a coaching practice or any business, is you need to have it like at least a year and a half worth of money in the bank.
Yeah.
Because most businesses don't make any money or they run at a loss.
Right.
And the only reason I was able to do this is I was married at the time.
Right.
And so I had insurance from my husband,
Right.
and we cut back because we went from a two income family to a one income family in the beginning.
Right.
And talking about networking, after I graduated, I was networking with everyone I could meet. There were all these organizations in Boston for coaches and HR people. And anytime anyone looked interesting, I took them out for coffee. And I said, tell me everything I need to know about building a practice, because I had never built a coaching practice. And everyone said the first year it's pitiful, which it was. I think I made $10,000 my first year, just letting people know that it is that bad. It can be that bad. And because I had some pro bono work, and because you're building it, I built it from zero.
Right.
Remember, my plan was to build a practice while I had a day job, but
Right.
the universe had other plans for me. So I was laid off before I really built a practice. It worked out okay. And if I were single and not independently wealthy, which I'm not, I would have had to find some part-time work to bring in money. And then starting the coaching practice would have been slower. So we have to talk about my good fortune there. And then people said, year 2, you start getting traction. Year 3, you build on it. And everyone said 5 years is when you really are doing well. And that was exactly what happened to me. For me, year 5 was COVID. And again, as you know, with your practice, coaching I could do during COVID. It's just everything went on Zoom, and I actually had my best year that year. So, building the practice for me, everyone does it differently. And I'm sure you coach your clients this way. Some people who like to write, they might do blog posts. They might do monthly newsletters that get sent out to prospective clients.
Right.
They become experts and, can write articles, and then they get clients that way. So it depends. Each person builds their practice in a way that aligns with who they are.
Right.
In the beginning, I wrote a few blog posts, not a lot. Then I got too busy. I really just went out networking as much as I could. And every single client has come through some connection.
Mm-hmm. And how did you know where to network or who to reach out to, or what were you telling them about what you were doing?
I started by taking all my professors in the coaching program out for coffee. So I was saying, I wasn't asking for a hand. I just said, what do I do?
Yeah.
And so they told me about a nonprofit in Boston called Social Innovation Forum.
Sure.
That provides executive coaching for nonprofit leaders. So I went, got the interview, and I became one of the coaches. I'm still there. And I don't even remember, people told me about various networking opportunities in Boston, and I went to them. And if someone looked interesting, I took them out for coffee. And that's how you and I met.
Right. Yeah, no, I think that's just very instructive to almost demystify what it takes, because I think some people think they have to show up with some big, long resume and polished elevator pitch and this and that. And I think showing up curious is probably the main ingredient. And it sounds like that's what you did. I mean, you also showed up with credibility too. You got yourself credentialed, and you had, years of experience in a number of different organizations and different types of roles and leadership roles and all of that. And, you had something to back yourself up, but you were also showing up curious and not as if you knew it all. And so I think that must have lent itself beautifully to getting people to make referrals and be helpful. So those are great. That was a great way to go about it. So what is your business looking like today? You talked about Social Innovation Forum. What other kinds of activities are you involved with?
So I work with new leaders through some of the work I do with Social Innovation Forum. They're like first-time managers or first-time directors, and helping them figure out what their leadership model is, because people often have an idea of what a leader is, and it's not them. And I help them see we each create our own sense of who we are as a leader. And I believe in helping people figure out what that is for them. As a quick example, so I do a lot of work. It's Boston, so there's a huge biopharma community here. So a lot of my clients are in the biopharma space. So a lot of scientists, which always cracks me up, because here I am, I have a BFA in illustration. But my mother was a scientist, and she died 30 years ago, actually 29 years ago this week, actually. She was a scientist, so I'm sure she's very delighted that I'm hanging out with all these scientists. So I had a client who she just got promoted to director, and she was in charge of a big project, and she had a team, and she was brilliant and well liked and respected at her company. And that's why they wanted to give her coaching to help her with her executive presence, because she's very shy, very soft-spoken, huge introvert. And they needed her to show up with a little bit more confidence at these meetings. So the first session was a Wednesday, and she was making her first presentation at a board meeting on Friday. And she was giving a report to the funders who were also going to be at the meeting. The funders, external funders, were funding her research. And this was the beginning of the research, and some of the results were not as promising as they would have liked. So I said, okay, what are you most worried about? And there's just a long list. And I said, well, here's the thing. You need to show up with confidence. And we were on Zoom, and she looked at me like I was crazy. How can I show up with confidence? She said, if the results aren't good. I said, well, are you confident that you will eventually get to a good place? She said, of course I'm confident about that. I said, is it typical that early in an experiment, the results are kind of sketchy or not what you hope? She said, yeah, that's normal. Well, just say with confidence, this is where we are. This is the results aren't what we'd like. Here's what we're going to do, and we will keep you informed, et cetera. I'm very optimistic. But the bigger thing, and this is something a lot of my clients are introverts, and even though I'm very much an extrovert, I've learned not tricks, but techniques that help introverts.
Right.
The other thing she was most worried about were the questions, because, here these people have money on the line, and she knew they'd fire off questions. And I knew that introverts do not think well on their feet.
Right.
One of the gifts of being an extrovert is we can make up stuff very easily, and it's not stressful.
Right.
And for introverts, they need quiet time to prepare.
Yes.
So, well, that's your homework. Between now and Friday, think of every question they're going to ask you, because you know what they're going to ask.
Right.
Prepare all your answers so that on Friday, you're prepared.
Right.
So the next time we met, she said it worked great. She even got a call from the CEO after the meeting, applauding how well she did. She answered all the questions. It got even heated in the meeting, not about her, but there was some disagreement, and she managed to bring it back on topic and keep everyone on track. So it was not trying to turn her into an extrovert. It was
Right.
just saying, this is who you are. If you're an introvert, you need to do your homework, period.
Right.
That is
That's
how
right.
you
That's right.
show up with confidence.
Right.
And it was just shifting her expectation where she was nervous about delivering bad news. I said, well, you have to deliver bad news. How can you
But
do
there's
that?
a side, there's another side to that, right? And you showed her what that was. I mean, we,
Exactly.
in coaching, we call that a reframe, right? And you gave her the reframe that she could work with. And you also gave her a way of working with it from her perspective rather than just saying, well, just do it kind of thing, right? Which wouldn't be
Right.
very coach-like.
No. And my favorite question is like, what are you most either worried about, nervous about? And her answer was the questions.
Yeah.
So that's how we easily then had a solution.
Right.
Then you need to do your homework.
Right. And, I think it does take, you do have to have an understanding of what makes someone tick and where they're at in terms of how they process information, right? And help them see it through that lens. So you do a lot of work with individuals. I know you also work with groups.
Yes.
Right. And anything else that you want to add to this?
Well, a couple things. One is about networking. As I said, I do a lot of work in the biopharma space. And one way I've built my practice is I also do workshops. So actually, the business development coach said, Etta, you have to check out this organization called WEST, Women in the Enterprise of Science and Technology. There are all these young women building their practice. They could really, use the kind of workshops you can deliver. And that was the other thing. I had never delivered workshops. And so I worked with another very experienced coach who taught me some structure. And then through that, I've done workshops through the organization. And then someone in the workshop say, they would then recommend me for other work. I had a great program with a research hospital, a training and coaching program for new leaders that I got through that.
Oh, that's great. Let's not forget you also have the Masters in Organizational Effectiveness. Okay. And I think that coupling that with the scientists and the people who have, more highly technical expertise is a beautiful marriage. Because oftentimes, and I'm not telling you anything you don't know, I'm saying this for the sake of our audience here. Oftentimes we have people who get trained, in highly technical areas, and yet then they get naturally promoted and elevated into roles that really require them to have management skills, people skills, a whole different skill sets that you and I have, right? And they're not trained in those skills. And that's where you've come in working with new leaders or helping to develop, certain types of programs to help people who have more of a technical background bring that almost their other side of their brain into
It is
play.
Literally the other side of their brain.
Yeah. And some people are well equipped for that and can assimilate, and other people are better off staying with the science and not trying to run a team or run an organization, because that's not really what they're suited to do, talking about fit. But that's oftentimes the natural trajectory in a lot of organizations. And
also, especially for these people who are highly educated in technical fields, they're very much in their heads.
Yeah.
And I know you do this with your clients, and I feel like a big part of what I can offer them, is a line of questioning, or I often send them off with these questions that get them out of their heads.
Yeah. Yeah.
And also often teach them this technique that I can model for you if you want.
Okay, let's do it.
So this is one of my favorite techniques. And often when I teach it to clients, they're so blown away by it that they teach it to their friends. So this is a coaching technique that people can actually, we're doing this live for the people who are listening. I did say to you that we might have time if we have time to do this. So you don't know what we're going to do. All you know is I asked you to come with something you're grappling with.
Yeah.
Often there's an either or question. So I've used this with clients. They get a job offer and they're really torn. Should I take it or not? And as we go through this, you'll see how it's helpful. And basically the goal is to get people out of their head because they make their list. Oh, here are all the pros and cons, but often that's not all the information you need. So quickly give us the context of what you're grappling.
What I'm grappling with. Well, and you'll have to tell me if this is specific enough. I'm grappling with what I want to really focus in on in 2023. So I want to set some priorities and really stick to them. And I have a number of ideas about what those things could be. I think they would all serve both my business and my clients very well. And I'm not sure how to balance those out. So the sort of general category is content creation. The question is, what means of content creation? Should I be focusing in on writing and trying to get published in certain publications? Should I be focusing in on creating video content? Should I be focused in on doing more live streaming? Could I do a combination of all of those things and have them one thing feed the other? Or am I really overcommitting myself, which is what I usually do? Because I do say yes to too many things. I know that.
Okay, so the context is perfect. So this will work.
Good.
So is it a matter of choosing where to start? Because, like you might start with writing and you realize and that's the other thing, people think that they make the decision, I'm going to start with writing, and then they realize they hate it, but then they feel like they're trapped because they say, well, I'm going to do the writing. And then you realize, so you change. It's like, I think that's another thing. People feel that once they take the new job, they're stuck there. Or they've committed to something, they're stuck. And I guess that's why I've never been stuck, because I tried. If it doesn't work, okay, now we know this doesn't work. Let's do something else. So
I don't feel it's funny.
I know you don't have that.
It's funny that you ask, do I know where to start? I'm thinking, I think that might be part of the issue is I don't think I've decided where to start. I've had the thought that starting with writing is a good idea because the writing could then serve as script material for what I would then transfer into creating some videos.
Okay, so let's start there.
Yeah.
So we're on audio, so no one can see it, but I find it helpful if you put your hand on your head.
Yeah.
And if you want, you can close your eyes or not. So what does your head want to tell you about what would be a good way for you to start? What your head wants you to know?
Well, my head I have like an image of a ping pong ball going back and forth. Video, writing. It seems like, but I think when I really focus in, I think the writing is the way to focus because that can fuel the video. I'm thinking the video, though, also, it's not just about the content for the video, it's the technique and being set up to actually orchestrate the video.
That's good. That's a good start. Now put your hand on your heart. You can take your hand off your head. So the reason we're doing this is to help you focus. So now ask your heart, what does your heart say about this?
My heart says, just start doing something, put one foot in front of the other, and the pieces will fall into place.
It's somewhat different than the head, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now put your hand on your gut. Let's check in with the gut. What's your gut say?
My gut is saying, listen to your heart.
And what does your gut want to say to your head?
Shut up. No, my gut, it did say that, but it's also saying, listen to the heart. There's no reason why you can't make this all happen. You just need to give yourself some grace and patience in the process.
And what does your head say now?
My head is saying, okay, I'll do my best.
Does it feel different than when we started?
Yeah, it's feeling less chaotic. It's feeling more settled. Like, oh, I've got a guide now, rather than feeling kind of scattered. Like, oh, now I've got a direction and a place to start. And I've even got some ideas about how I'm going to start to do this, to really fulfill this.
Okay. We could keep going, but I think this feels like an okay place to stop.
Yeah. No, this was great.
Isn't that amazing how fast
it is amazing. That was live, folks. That was real. That was not orchestrated at all.
Nope. I had no idea what you were going to talk about, and you had no idea what I was going to do.
Nope. And I now know what I'm going to do.
Amazing.
Now I know what the beginning of 2023 is going to look like. How cool is that?
That's the magic of coaching, is just letting people hear what it is that feels right.
Mm-hmm.
And just like we were saying, a job has to align with your values. The reason this is probably my favorite technique is we know we feel settled when our head, our heart, and our gut are aligned. And often 2 or 3 are at war, or they're different sides of ourselves that want different things. And often there's fear. I had a client recently who is very bright. Also, in addition to do biopharma, I also do coaching at Harvard Business School, which is amazing in their program. So I need techniques that work quickly to help people, because they're very short-term relationships. And often when people go to the program, they're, at a transition. And I've done this with a couple of people, and one person had done startups, and he built a startup and it was very successful, and he had an opportunity to start a new one. So he thought for sure that's what he would do. And his startup is growing and is very successful. So the problem for him is what to do: leave and go to the startup, or stay and take this much bigger. And he thought for sure, he knew, the answer, my strength is going to the startup. So we did the head, heart, and gut. And his head said, go with your strength, go to the startup. And then the heart said, but I built this company. I miss people. And then what came out of it is he realized it was really, he needed the challenge of staying and doing something outside of his comfort zone. But through the coaching, he was able to let go. I think there was a little fear there for him. He didn't use that word.
Yeah.
He was wanting to go for what he was sure about. He knew how to do a startup. He didn't know how to take a company that was small and then make it big. Mm-hmm. And he realized that was more aligned with where he was in his career. And then when I saw him a couple of weeks later, he said, yep, I'm good. And he was very solid. So the reason this works is it allows you to just really grapple with different perspectives. That's really what this is, to broaden your perspective and not just be monofocused.
Right.
And then work out what the concerns are.
Right.
And
right. Not be monofocused.
So by tapping into the head, the heart, and the gut, it's like asking 3 friends, 3 colleagues, different perspectives.
I love that. I love
That's
that.
basically what it is.
Yeah.
And it gets us, and notice the shift you felt. Like the heart just was instantaneous. Like, well, duh, just start
Yeah.
writing. It'll work out in your gut. So basically, back to where we started, that's intuitively what I do when someone says, do you want to have this opportunity? The answer is yes. Just trust and all the pieces will fall into place.
I love it. So, Etta, we're going to wrap this up. So, what's the best way for people to find you and you learn even more about your brilliant work?
I have 2 websites, and that's
Okay.
another whole story. And they can get all of this in your resources.
Yes, it'll all be in the
I'll be there.
Yeah.
And you can see me on LinkedIn, just under Etta Jacobs, and that will take you to everything else.
Okay.
So the Hermes path, and there's the story behind that on the website where that name came from.
Yes.
That's primarily individuals would go there. And then I also do work with organizations and the name of that business. So they're 2 separate businesses, but they're both me.
Right.
Power in the Middle. And that's focused on coaching and training for mid-level managers.
Love it.
I know what
Hermes
it's like
path,
to be a manager without training.
and Power in the Middle. And we'll have all the links in every which way people can find you in the show notes. And I want to wrap up with a final question, although I feel like it's already been answered here, but I'm going to throw it out there anyway. So if you had to give somebody a key piece of advice about making their next move or making a transition, what would be that key piece of advice you would give them?
Well, often I know, and I've heard you ask guests this, and often they say, follow your heart or follow your gut. And I think based on the technique I just taught you, it's checking with all of them.
Yes.
And get out of your head. The answer is not in your head.
Right.
It's absolutely not in your head. And it's aligning all of it.
Yes. Not be
And
monofocused.
don't listen to someone else, because even the most well-meaning friends, colleagues, wives, husbands, parents, they can't help but see things through their own perspective.
Right. Yeah.
So you need to figure out, does it align with who I am and what I can bring to this?
Right.
And if you hear the word should, that's not the answer.
That's right. If the word should is in the sentence, you know you're heading in a direction that is not serving you.
Correct.
And on that beautiful note, Etta Jacobs, I am so grateful to have you in my life. And I'm so grateful to have you here on the podcast. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. And I am grateful for you as well. Thank you.
I hope you enjoyed my interview with Etta Jacobs. It was so interesting to speak with her and learn about her early life, her transitions, and current professional endeavors. What is your key takeaway from our interview? If you are interested in any of the resources mentioned in today's podcast, you can find them in the show notes on my website at tammygoolerloeb.com/podcast. Just look for episode 210. Are you anticipating your next professional move? Check out my award-winning book, Work from the Inside Out, Break Through 9 Common Obstacles and Design a Career That Fulfills You. It's available in print and ebook editions through my website, Amazon, Barnes & Noble, independent bookstores, or through your local library. If you were inspired by this episode with Etta, please share it with your friends and colleagues, and please do subscribe so you don't miss next week's show. Remember, subscribing is always free. And if you're enjoying the podcast, I would be ever so grateful to read your review of the podcast on Apple Podcasts. It's easy to find. Just go to my website, tammygoolerloeb.com/podcast. Just click on the Apple Podcast button and follow the instructions provided there. You can also help sustain the podcast by buying me a cup of coffee. Just go to buymeacupofcoffee.com/TammyGL. Since this podcast is self-funded, I always appreciate your support. Thank you so much for listening, and remember, it's never too late or too impossible to increase your sense of fulfillment and satisfaction in your work and other meaningful activities. Let me know how it's going for you. I'd love to hear from you. Bye for now.
Thank you for listening to the Work from the Inside Out podcast. For more information, you can find us at www.workfromtheinsideout.com.